With the new championship season set to kick off later this week, it's about time we made our fantasy football team for the upcoming campaign. Now, unlike previous years, we actually have two separate versions of fantasy football to get stuck into this year. We've got the official EFL fantasy game, which consists of making a 7-a-side team for the season. We'll be building that team first, but we'll also be picking a team from Gaff's fantasy football game as well, which is the more traditional fantasy experience where you pick your 11-a-side team for this season. I'll be making mini leagues for both of these games as well, so if you want to join one of the leagues or both of them, you can go ahead and do so. I'll leave the league codes in the description down below. But we'll start today's video off on the official fantasy EFL game and build our team for that first. So here we go, this is the official EFL fantasy game. Unlike traditional fantasy football, you only pick 7 players for this one, and you can actually go ahead and pick players from League 1 and League 2 if you wish as well. For the purposes of this video, I think I'll be sticking to championship players, but if you want to chuck League 1 and League 2 players into your team, you can go ahead and do so as well. Also, interestingly, there were no price tags on this game, so you're not hamstrung by the quality of players that you can put into your team, but you are only allowed to pick 2 players per club. As well as picking 7 players on this game as well, you can also pick 2 clubs that will win you points as well. Say for example, I picked Preston North End as one of my clubs and we beat Sheffield United on the opening game week of the season. That will generate me a few extra points on the game as well, which is quite interesting. But for this game, we've got 7 players to pick and 2 clubs, so let's start out by building the team, and we'll work from front to back. I think we'll go for forwards first and then work our way backwards immediately. I mean, he's selected by 11.5% of players, but I think Emmanuel Latte is someone who I am really tempted to put into my team. Middlesbrough have got a decent start to the season on paper. He ended last season really strong. I think he's going into my team. It is a basic pick because he's been selected by a lot of people, but I don't care. I'm putting him in my team. For my other forward player, there's a lot of good options here to choose from, isn't there? If we go through the complete list of players, I'm tempted to go for Joseph, you know. He's looked sharp in pre-season. If he's going to be that leading number 9 for Leeds this season especially, they've got a decent looking start on paper as well. But in saying that, Rutter is someone who I really like as well. I know he's not the most prolific in front of goal, but creativity, he's really good. Scored an excellent goal in pre-season that I saw as well. For the time being, I'm going to go for Rutter as my other forward, but I could change my opinion on that. Midfield, I understand why Sammy Smodics is so highly picked, but I think there's a good chance that he leaves at some point, so replacing him would be a bit of a headache. Obviously, Gabriel Sara's already left. He was selected by a lot of players. First midfield pick, I'm going to go for Sakamoto, I think, at Coventry. They've got an alright start to the season on paper, I think, with those 3 fixtures. Really like the look of him last season, obviously up until he picked up that injury. And I see Cov scoring quite a few goals this season as well. I know they've got my team Preston on the opening game week of the season, but I'm also tempted to go with Callum O'Hare as well. I think if he's going to be the main creative hub in that Sheffield United side, I see them scoring a fair few goals this season. I'm tempted to go with him as well. You've got the former Coventry duo there as my midfield too. Defence, it's all about players who you think are going to get clean sheets. Also, an attacking return from a defender can be pretty valuable. I like Ryan Giles with the potential of attacking returns, but how strong Hull will be defensively, I'm not sure right now. Tempted to go for Jayden Bogle, you know. I quite like that addition at Leeds. They were really strong defensively last season, and I could see him getting a few goal returns in that Farke system, so I'm going to add him into my side, I think. As my other defender, I think I might go Rav van den Berg, you know. Doubling up on the Middlesbrough players here, but I think there's decent potential for a few clean sheets in those opening fixtures. Looked really good to me last season as well. Then finally, for my goalkeeping option, I guess I'll go for James Trafford. Burnley weren't great defensively in the Premier League last season, but under Parker this time around, you'd imagine they'd be pretty steady at the back. It's a tough opening fixture against Luton. Maybe James Beadle could be another option for that position, actually. Obviously, Wednesday, really good defensively under Danny Roll in the back end of last season. Yeah, why not? I'm going to back James Beadle, I think. I'm going to go with him as my goalkeeper. So, first draft, that's my 7-a-side team for the season. And then to finish off your team, you also have to select 2 clubs as well. So you'll change the clubs that you pick on every game week, and I believe you can only pick a club a maximum of 5 times throughout a season, so you've got to take that into consideration as well. Basically, who do I think is going to win on the opening game week of the season? This is what we're picking here, isn't it? The teams most selected on the opening game week are Leeds, Norwich, Sheffield Wednesday and Sheffield United, so clearly those are the teams that a lot of people are backing on the opening game week, and looking at their fixtures, I can understand why. I think I'm going to play it pretty safe this opening game week. I'm going to go for Leeds, who are at home against Portsmouth, as my first club, and I'm also going to go for Sheffield Wednesday, who are at home against Plymouth as well. I'm going to add those two in, and that should complete my team there. I'll probably tinker with this draft between now and the start of the season, but Fantasy EFL, that's my first team selected. If you want to join the BenHD YouTube League for Fantasy EFL, I'll leave a link in the description down below and a league code to join as well. Make sure to get involved. Now let's go ahead and jump over to Gaffr. So by this point, I'm sure all of you are aware of Gaffr. We've been playing it on the channel for the past few seasons now. This one is a little bit more traditional fantasy football. You build an 11-a-side team with your substitutes as well, and you also have a budget of 100 million, and each player priced at different price points, so you have to be a little bit more selective with who you go ahead and pick for your team. This is the first draft that I'm building. I'm doing it off the fly here, but it's always quite a bit of fun throughout the season, and if you do want to get involved, I'll leave a link to that league code in the description down below. Also, a smaller pool of players will be playing in the Patreon league as well. If you want to get involved with that, make sure to check it out. But let's go ahead and build the opening draft for Gaffr. We'll start out with the forwards because I feel like this is where we're going to spend the most amount of money. What's putting me off Burnley players a little bit is they have that opening day fixture against Luton, which is on Monday, but I do think they're going to be really strong this season. I think they'll score a fair few goals. I think Foster is someone who I do like the look of. He is 10 million, so it does eat away at quite a bit of our budget, but I'm fairly confident he'll bag quite a few goals. Latte Lath, we had him on the previous team. I think I'm going to pick him for this one as well. He comes in at 9 million. There's a lot of expensive midfielders to pick from on this year's game. Obviously, Somerville not been removed yet. He was the most expensive at 12 mil, but obviously won't be selecting him. Jack Clark is still at Sunderland, and even at 10.5 mil, I quite like that price. I'm going to go for Jack Clark. I just see him being involved in so many of the goals that Sunderland are going to score this season, but yeah, we have eaten away at quite a bit of our budget with just 3 players there, but we're getting in some of the big hitters straight away. Not to copy the team I just made on Fantasy EFL, but Sakamoto at 7 mil, I quite like the look of. He's going to go into my team. I always like to get at least one North End boy in there. I'm going to go with Frotjar Jensen. He's only 6 mil. I'm imagining he's going to be our most creative player this season as well. I know Preston don't tend to score that many goals, but at 6 mil, I think that's a decent option. Starting to build out some of the defence. I mean, Doherty coming in at 7 million. That is really expensive for a defender, but thinking about the potential goal returns he could get back, really good for chance creation in the Premier League last season, wasn't he? I'm going to stick him in for the time being, but we may need to take him out based on our remaining budget. Bogle, I like at 6.5 mil. Vandenberg at 5.5, I think he's decent. I'm going to go with him as well in defence. So we've got 8 players selected so far, and that's sort of the core of the starting 11 that I'm building, but obviously we will need to be a little bit more conservative with some of the money to fill up the rest of these spots. Looking at some of the goalkeepers, Max O'Leary at 5 mil. I think is decent value for money. Bristol City were fairly sturdy defensively last season. I see no reason why that should change coming into this campaign. Potentially with a rotation option for Beadle. I don't mind that, although I am spending 10 mil on goalkeepers there. Continuing to build out the back line, Jake Lock-Salter at 5 mil. I think is decent. Defensively, QPR were pretty sturdy under Cifuentes last season. I'm going to go with him. As my final defender, I wouldn't mind throwing a Burnley guy in there, but I'm not totally sure who's going to be a nailed-on starter for Burnley at the moment. Is Vitinho, for example, definitely going to be starting that first game week of the season? Parker's obviously got quite a few options to rotate between. I'm going to put Vitinho in there for the time being, but I could change that one. Having a look at some of the cheapest strikers, do you know what? Mateo Joseph for just 7 million, I think is a really decent price point for him, and the potential he's got to score a lot of goals for Leeds this season. I'm going to chuck him into the team, leaves us with 10.5 mil to pick our last 2 players. As we've not got that much money to play around with, I'm going to have to go for a budget midfielder as one of my options here. Adam Randall, I think, could be a decent one for Plymouth. He was involved with a few goals last season, but he'll mostly just be a bench player in this team. That then gives us 6 million to play around with our last spot. As my last pick in midfield, I'll go for a Sheffield United boy. I'll go for David Brooks as my last pick. It uses up all my budget completely, but as a first draft, doing it off the cuff, I'm pretty happy with that. I'll probably make changes to this between now and the start of the season. You guys will have to let me know about any injury news or anyone you think I should be selecting for my team. But as a first initial draft, I don't mind that. Like I said though guys, link to the Gaffr fantasy football game and the league code you'll need to join the league is in the description down below, so make sure to go ahead and check that out. Let me know who's going in your team as well. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.